Okay, so continuation of what we were doing in class just now, with a dihybrid cross, two traits, and they're going to be, it's almost like doing two separate Punnett squares. Okay, but I'm going to show you two like different ways to do this. The idea is, I changed this so if we were doing one trait, you know, flower color, big A, little a, those are our two alleles. Dihybrid cross would be two traits. So we've got flower color and also seed shape right now. We made a little key, always do that. And let's just say this is our example. We have two parents. They're both heterozygous for both traits. Their phenotypes, they're both going to be purple and round, and they're both going to be big A, big B, little b. All right, this is our practice problem. And then you have the slide on the other side. So the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out what gametes can be made. Be produced. If we were just looking at a single trait, which was big A, little a, so let's just say we're looking at one trait, the gametes produced are going to be either big A or little a, right? They can only make their, you know, meiosis is going to be either they're going to produce half the cells have a capital A, half the cells have a lowercase a. We also, last week, we drew it out, you know, like the sperm cells and the egg cells. These are the gametes that are made. So big A, little a. Now, if you have a second trait, you also now are including the B, which is the seed shape. So big B, little b can also make capital B or lowercase b. Now, when you do a dihybrid cross, you have to get all the combinations of A's and B's now. So since we're doing two traits, you have to get all the different combinations. So one way you do it is if you have the genotype. So remember, this is a genotype. These are the letters. If you remember, like one of the actual previous students used FOIL. So like first, outside, inside, last, like when you're doing math with, I think it's quadratic equations, not sure, but you take all of the different combinations. So first combination, big A, capital B, that's one gamete that can be made. Here is second option, could be capital A, lowercase b. That's another gamete that can be made. Another option, lowercase a, capital B. Okay, so inside, we did the first, outside, inside, and now last. Last option could be the gamete would be lowercase a and lowercase b. So if you have a heterozygous individual, the gametes that can be made are going to be capital A, capital B, capital A, lowercase b, lowercase a, capital B, and then lowercase for both. Those are the four different gametes produced. Since the other parent is the exact same, it's going to be the same gametes produced. All right. So now what you do is you have, these are the different gametes for each parent, and you're going to make a huge Punnett square. So instead of a 4 square, let me try to be as neat as possible since I'm recording this. So instead of having our really basic Punnett square earlier with one trait, monohybrid right there, we have a huge one because we're doing a dihybrid cross. And then these are the 4 gametes that are produced. So each of these is going to go on top of one of the columns. So capital A, capital B, capital A, lowercase b, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase a, lowercase b. If I really wanted to depict this, these would all be little sperm cells. Remember, so these are gametes being made. And then the other parent goes along the other side, but since they're the same, they're both heterozygous, it's gonna be the same gametes. Big A, big B. And then here are the other gametes, so egg cells. Each gamete that gets made. Same thing now, you combine the letters, you combine the genes, fertilization into each box. All right, and when you do this, you want to keep similar letters together. All right, so this first box right here, you do capital A and then capital A together, capital B, like that. Next one, capital A, capital B, lowercase b, capital A, like that. Capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b. Okay, so yes, it takes a while. You have to fill it all in. I'm not going to do all of them, but I will do this last one right here, little a, little b. Okay, let me pause and let me fill this in, and then I'll resume. Okay, so I filled in this massive Punnett square, and then I included the different phenotypes for the offspring. So notice for the phenotypes, we've got how many of the offspring will be purple and round. So we still have the different combinations of the traits. The notation I used for this is what we learned in class today. So purple and round, they're both the dominant traits up here. So they're both the capital letters. That means that using that notation, big A dash, big B dash, that dash means that the second letter could be either a capital or lowercase. You're still going to end up with purple and round. All right. Second option is purple and wrinkled. So big A dash, but since wrinkled is the recessive, little b. White and round, little a, big B dash. And then finally, how many of them will be white and wrinkled? So both recessive, it would be little a, little b. All right. Now you can pause and just like look at each option yourself. But if I counted up all of these, so there's 16 squares, the number of them that are going to be purple and round of the offspring is going to be 9/16. Purple and wrinkled is 3/16. White and round is 3/16. And then white and wrinkled, there's actually only one option right here. One box is little a, little b. That's 1 out of 16. So this like ratio, this is kind of like for a dihybrid cross. This is like a number that, or this, you should be familiar with this. It's a 9:3:3:1 ratio when you have two heterozygous parents. Okay, I'll write it out. This is a 9. It's a very common, so it'll be 9:3:3:1 ratio when you have a dihybrid cross and both parents are heterozygous. It's kind of like when we have a monohybrid cross with two heterozygous parents. I think a lot of you are familiar with, now it's always 3:1. That's like the ratio that you might be familiar with, or 75%, 25%. In this case, with a dihybrid with heterozygous, is a 9:3:3:1 ratio. And the way I got this is because you take all the different gametes that could be made from each parent and you combine them together. Okay, this is probably one of the more complex ones because they're both heterozygous. Now let's say I do a simpler version. Okay, so let's say one parent is heterozygous. Okay, so same as what we did before. And the second parent, let's say they are big A, big A, big A, big B, lowercase b. Okay, so now this is my cross. Now for the first one, we're still going to get those same 4 gametes that I showed you. So big A, big B, little b, little a, big B, little a, little b. For this one though, we're doing all this combination still, but if you look at it, if I do all four, you know, this one, this one, this one, and this one, all the combinations though, since the first set there is homozygous, big A, the two gametes, you know, you can simplify. You don't have to do all four. So it'd be big A, big B. There's two of those, so you don't have to write both. And the other option is big A and little b. So in this case, the gametes that are produced by the second parent, there's just two right here. All right, so when you do your Punnett square, you don't have to do a whole big 16 Punnett square thing. You could just do a smaller version. So across the top, you have the gametes here. And then these two would be on the side. If you fill it in, you would do the same thing. You can still figure out how many of them are going to be of each phenotype. Okay, but instead of doing that big, huge square, you could just do a simple one like this. All right, so this is the typical, like, you know, this would be an example of a dihybrid cross. If you guys look at the practice problems, you'll have versions of these types of problems where you have two traits, two different letters. The thing that people get the most confused about is how to make the gametes. So with the gametes, it's always be one of each letter. But when you combine them, you have all four together because it's a complete set fertilization. Okay, now there is another, like a shortcut way, and I think some of you already saw how to do this, but instead of doing a big Punnett square like this, you can also do two smaller Punnett squares. Each Punnett square is a different trait. So instead of doing a big massive one, you could just do the A's crossed with each other. So I'm going to do that here. So in red, I could just cross the A's. So in this case, big A, little a. The second parent is big A, big A. And then I could cross the B's. This would be my green box. So this first parent, big B, little b. Second parent, big B, little b. You do your individual Punnett squares, big A, big A, big A, little a. So you do your individual Punnett squares, and then you could figure out how many of each type based off this thing called a multiplication rule. So let's say I want to find out how many are going to be purple and round. So that means they are big A dash, big B dash. So the way you do this is purple and round. How many of these are purple? If you look, this is purple, 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 purple. They all have a dominant allele, the capital letter. So out of 4, it would be 4 out of 4, right? That's like 100%. As a fraction, you would do 1, right? So 4 out of 4 simplifies to 1. So the multiplication rule says you multiply the chance of a purple by the chance of a round. So 1 times, if I look at this second one, how many of them are round? This is round, 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 wrinkled. So in this case, it's 3 out of 4 are going to be round times 1. So do the math, it would be 3/4 will be round, purple and round. If I do the next one, which is purple and wrinkled, I have big A dash, but then wrinkled is recessive, so little b, little b. Once again, they're all purple, right? So 1, and I multiply it by how many of them are wrinkled, 1 out of 4, 1/4. So my chances are 1/4. If I continue on, white and round, that would be little a, big B dash. None of these are white, so it's 0. 0 times 3/4 equals 0. And then the last one, which would be white, wrinkled, little a, little b. Once again, none of them are white, so 0 times, and this is 1/4. It doesn't matter because it's multiplying by 0. So I have 0. So your answer, if you did it this way with 2 Punnett squares, your answer would be 3/4 of them would be purple and round, 1/4 of them would be purple and wrinkled. None of them will be white and round. None of them will be white and wrinkled. I didn't fill in this top square, but if you fill this in with all the genotypes and you counted up each one, you would also get the same numbers as down here. All right, so this is the option, like second way to solve these dihybrid crosses is to do 2 separate Punnett squares and do the multiplication rule. First option is to make all the gametes, make a big Punnett square and do it that way. A lot of people like to do it this way. It's easier, but it's up to you. Okay, so I want you to try to do the problems on the worksheet. I will post the answer key and we'll go over it in class. On Thursday, I might give you a quiz on a dihybrid cross. Okay, so the quiz, what I would ask you is what are the gametes that are produced like this? Similar how we did it here and also here, what gametes are produced, and then asking you to analyze the results. All right. Okay, you can message me if you have any questions. See you Thursday.